Once again, good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you to the 2008 Institute of Economic Affairs Presidential Debates. May we now be upstanding as we welcome the presidential candidates of the New Patriotic Party, the NPP, the Convention People's Party, the National Democratic Congress, and the People's National Convention. We will now call upon Reverend Dr. Fred Degbe to give us the opening prayer.
Our Heavenly Father, from whom all blessings flow, we thank you for gathering us here today from far and near. We have come at your bidding. We are a nation at a crossroad to make decisions as to who you have elected and appointed to rule us in the next 4 years. Tonight offers us the opportunity to hear them speak. We pray for those who are on stage. Grant them wisdom, grant them courage, grant them the confidence to deliver their message to the nation and to the entire world. Even for us who listen, grant us the discernment. We ask that when all is said and done, your will and only your will be done in this nation. We ask this in the matchless name of our Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
God bless our homeland, Ghana, and make our nation great and strong, bold to defend forever the cause of freedom and of right. Fill our hearts with true humility. Make us cherish fearless honesty, and help us to resist oppressors' rule with all our will and might forevermore. And help us to resist oppressors' rule with all our will and might forevermore.
Please be seated. It is now my singular honor to call upon Ms. Jean Mensah, Administrator of the Institute of Economic Affairs, to give us each candidate.
I welcome you all to this historic event. I also extend a special hand of welcome to our 4 distinguished presidential candidates. Tonight is a special one for us at the IEA, and I believe for the whole country. History is in the making, and we are proud to be associated with it. This evening's debate is a significant milestone in Ghana's democratic development for a number of reasons. This will be the first election in the 4th Republic in which a sitting president or vice president is not contesting for the highest office of the land. Secondly, this is the first time in our history that all political parties with representation in Parliament are taking part in a presidential debate. Furthermore, with the organization of this debate, our country, Ghana, has attained the spectacular distinction of being the first and only African country to hold 3 presidential debates back to back. First in 2000, second in 2004, and then this one in 2008. In all of this, the Institute of Economic Affairs is proud to have been involved in the organization of these debates. Founded 2 decades ago as Ghana's first public policy institute, the IEA has helped broaden the space for policy dialogue and continues to strengthen the pillars of Ghana's democracy. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, attaining democratic maturity is like trying to reach the horizon. The closer you get, the further away it is from you. Yet, we should not stop trying. This presidential debate is yet another step towards reaching that horizon. Distinguished guests, the very preamble of the 1992 Constitution, as well as its first article, repose sovereignty in the will of the people. The hosting of these debates tonight is a practical expression of that sovereignty. For these debates provide a platform that enable voters to become better informed and critically assess the suitability of the various presidential aspirants based on questions that they, the voters themselves, have submitted to the IEA. For after all, those who seek to govern must allow themselves to be subjected to questions by the electorate to ensure that they understand the voters' concerns and have the capacity to address them. We believe at the IEA that political parties are the heart and soul of any democracy. And with the discovery that politics matter, we are of the view that political parties are necessary and ought to play key roles in the engineering of our national development. Distinguished guests, whereas one is tempted to say that political parties are part of the problem that needs to be addressed, we do believe that they also form part of the solution in providing a more stable and democratic political system responsive to the needs of the people. This evening, we bring together our presidential candidates to share their visions for the country. It is our hope that tonight's program will help strengthen our collective resolve to continue to make strides towards that democratic horizon. At this point, I'd like to thank the British High Commission, the Center for International Private Enterprise, and the UNDP for supporting this initiative. May we collectively, as one people, uphold democracy and strive to strengthen its pillars. I have the pleasure to call on His Eminence Peter Cardinal Appiah-Texan, Chairman of the IEA Presidential Debates Committee, to give us a few remarks. Cardinal.
Good evening, Your Excellencies, Honorable Ministers of State, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, particularly to you, flag bearers and the presidential candidates. I wish to particularly welcome you, my dear beloved flag bearers of the New Patriotic Party, Nana Akufo-Addo, of the Convention People's Party, Kwesi Ndum, of the National Democratic Congress, Professor John Evans Atta Mills, and the People's National Congress, Dr. Edward Mahama. Convention. We welcome all of you to this first debate of the year 2008. As you very well know, on the 7th of December, the electorate of our dear land will go to the polls to decide to entrust into the hands of one of you the leadership of this land and the service of its people for the next 4 years. In your own various ways, you have sought with your campaigns to prepare the people of Ghana for that eventful day you've sought especially to suggest a way of voting to the electorate in your various campaigns. The IEA, as you just heard, and the debates committee intend to contribute modestly to this ongoing preparation of the electorate of Ghana for the exercise of their democratic franchise come December 7th. With the organization of this debate, it is our sincere hope that at the end of this debate, and the other one to follow up in Tamale, the Ghanaian electorate would be more knowledgeable about the presidential options before it and be better equipped to make informed choices. Accordingly, while we thank you, honorable guests and presidential candidates, for your gracious acceptance of our invitation, for without you there would indeed be no debate at all. While we thank you for having accepted our invitation to be here, we pray that this debate may enhance your own various preparations of the voters of this country to express their thumb power in your favor on December 7th. We wish you all good luck, and we pray that God will support and be with you all tonight. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, for every debate, there are rules and formats. So the format and rules governing these debates are as follows. There will be 4 rounds of questions with 2-minute breaks in between. A new candidate will begin each round of questions. This is based on the pickings done during the balloting for seats. There would be at least 3 questions in each round. Moderators would have 30 seconds to ask a main question. Presidential candidates have 3 minutes within which to answer a main question. The moderators have the discretion to ask follow-up questions in 10 seconds, while candidates have 1 minute within which to answer a follow-up question. The moderators have the discretion to allow a right to rebuttal. Candidates have 30 seconds in exercising their right to rebuttal. There shall be a timekeeper to keep these times. There shall be no clapping during the debates. I repeat, there shall be no clapping during the debates. However, you are free to do so at the breaks in between the rounds. At the end of the 4th round, each candidate will have 2 minutes to make a direct appeal to voters. And finally, please kindly switch off all mobile phones. I repeat, please kindly switch off all mobile phones. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my singular honor and privilege to introduce to you the moderators for this evening's debate. They are Professor Kwame Karikari, Associate Professor, School of Communication Studies, University of Ghana, Legon. And one who needs very little introduction. He is a veteran broadcast journalist, none other than Mr. Cyril Akolache. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we hope you will have a good evening. Over to our moderators. Thank you.
Mr. Announcer, my name again is Kwame Karikari, and my colleague is Cyril Akolache. Our duty here is to make it very well and very good for you, to facilitate a good debate, a sound debate, a civil debate for all of our people in the country. Before we start the debate, Honorable gentlemen, I would like to propose a piece of advice. Kindly focus your answers on the issues. Avoid attacks on personalities. Use the time to establish your party's agenda or your agenda for this country, and therefore project the dignity with which you want to take this country's highest office as president. We wish you all very good luck. Now, we want to start with our first question, and as the announcer said, the first question will be answered according to how you are seated from the left. The second set of questions will be answered from the second person, and so on and on. Now, here is the first question. All of you have put in your manifestos that you will want to put money in the pockets of the people of Ghana. This implies creating jobs. What specifically would you do to create more jobs? Honorable Nana Akufo-Addo.
So good evening, fellow Ghanaians. I think as Ghanaians we should all be very happy about this event and be grateful to the IEA and all those who are associated with the IEA in bringing about this event, and bringing together all of us who are candidates for the leadership of our nation. And I'm particularly happy to have the two of you, Sir Akolache and Kwame Kakari, stalwart figures of the media, moderating this event. I also have to take the opportunity to wish my colleagues and friends here the best of luck. Hopefully they're not at my expense. But that's the central issue. It's the central question for us in this campaign and in the management of our nation. Briefly. First of all, at the level of the public sector, we're committed to doing some things that will have an impact on jobs. We're committed to increasing the police service of our country, doubling it from 25,000 to 50,000. We're committed to putting 20,000 sanitary inspectors, old Tankanse inspectors, on the street every year for the next 5 years. We're also committed to increasing the employment range of the National Youth Employment Program from 108,000, which it is now, to some 500,000. But more significantly than the public sector jobs are what the private sector can do. Because we're running and have based our whole philosophy and looking at Ghana on the premise that it is the private sector that above all will be responsible for creating jobs. What does that mean? Two things. Firstly, how we can support small and medium-scale enterprises in our country. Because everywhere else, including our own, they are the main providers and creators of jobs. That's why we have committed ourselves to establishing an industrial fund, 1 billion cedi, to make it easier for people who want to create new enterprises, small and medium-scale enterprises, to access capital. We're also saying that the transformation of our economy, moving it away from an economy producing raw materials to an industrializing, value-adding economy, i.e. factories, industries, will be, in the medium to long term, the best way of guaranteeing jobs for the mass of people. And then finally, apart from the small-scale and medium-scale enterprise, we're committed, for instance, in manufacturing, to reducing the tax burden on industry by proposing a reduction of corporate tax from 25 to 15%. Finally, the major industrial projects that we really need to get off the ground, and which fortunately now we're in a position to address directly. The exploitation of our iron ore deposits at Opong Manso. The new industries that are going to come from the discovery of oil. And then, of course, the integrated aluminum industry that already is in progress. But these, grosso modo, are the way that we look at addressing this very vital issue of how we can get our people in employment.
Thank you very much. Cyril, do you have a follow-up question?
Honorable Akufo-Addo, how would you, when you next get a chance to rule, take the head porters, we call them kayaye, and truck pushers off the street?
I think there's several things that we need to do. First of all, we need to open the avenue for more education for everybody. Those who are already in the streets, the whole business of evening classes, distance learning, try to educate and push people into that arena. So, because at the end of the day, what really is at stake here? Skills, upgrading for jobs. Because that is the central issue. We have a mass of people who are really not equipped at the moment to be able to operate a modern industrial economy. So how we can get the skills out to them is one fundamental policy position that we have taken. Distance education, learning. The apprenticeship program that we now want to launch within the larger process of stimulating our industrial development. How, for instance, we could get many into the apprenticeship program. That becomes another way of enhancing the capacity and the skills.
Thank you. Honorable Parko Sindom, this is your turn.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening, and good evening to my fellow citizens of Ghana. Job creation, this is the centerpiece of what the Convention People's Party is offering to Ghanaians, and that is how come we say Ejumura, that we want to bring change, but not just any kind of change, change that Ghanaians, not Americans, not Japanese, not Chinese, not the British, change that Ghanaians can feel in their pockets. And if that is going to be done, we need to do something different from what we've been doing these past 16 years. And specifically, this is what we will do. We will use the state's purchasing power to buy what we produce here in this country. If we grow rice, we will buy Ghanaian rice. If we produce anything, we will buy that which is produced here in Ghana. That is, after all, what the Koreans did. That is what the Singaporeans did. Indeed, that is what the Americans do. If you see an American official coming from the United States of America to Ghana, they fly American Airlines. This is what the Convention People's Party will lead us to do. Use the state's purchasing power to help our private sector and others to grow. And indeed, I have said everywhere, you come to a state function under the Convention People's Party's leadership, nothing will pass your lips and be tempted to touch your tongue if it was not grown in Ghana or produced in Ghana. Our people need the help. And the most important thing you do is you create a market in Ghana for the people who have invested their monies in Ghana. That is what we'll do. And let me just give you 2 or 3 specific examples. If you go to Mali, near Damango, we have a wonderful tourist attraction, the Mali Game Park. The road is horrible. We will create a first-class road there so that people from all over the world will come to Mali. Jobs will be created. If you go to the Ashanti region, we are a leading cocoa producer. 200 million sacks of cocoa sacks are needed. We will bring back the jute factory, plant kenaf all over the country, and make sure we create real jobs Ghanaians can benefit from. And indeed, the oil that has been found in the Western region, we don't want under a CPP administration to have anybody say, we're just going to continue to export the raw materials. We will create a petrochemicals industry in the Western region, produce plastics, polyester, and other things, so that real jobs that can fill Ghanaian pockets, that they can come in this country. And then finally, what we will do is the state itself, and after all, it is being done in America today. The state is reinvesting in its insurance industry, in the financial industry, $700 billion. The state in America is putting in $300 billion to help and subsidize its farmers. We will do the same in Ghana. That is what the Convention People's Party will do, to create jobs, meaningful jobs for Ghanaian pockets.
Sir, Dr. Ndum, you've enumerated areas or schemes that you hope will create jobs. Now, what is your attitude, or what would be your attitude to this culture of buy and sell, which many people think is not productive? People indulge in buy and sell on the streets.
Well, you see, buy and sell is not necessarily bad, as long as you are buying and selling what you produce in your own country. That is where our emphasis lies, is to ensure that we can industrialize. And remember, in the 1960s, we started industrialization. Over 60 enterprises in this country, and then somehow, some were sold, some were collapsed. We will bring most of them back. Industrialization is what we need. No country in the world has developed on the backs of exporting raw materials or supporting what other people create and then sell in their own country. We will not support that. We want to produce here in this country. That is what will produce meaningful jobs. That is what will produce good money in Ghanaian people's pockets.
Professor Atamils, your turn to respond to the main question. How would you create more jobs in order to put more money in the pockets of Ghanaians?
Thank you for the opportunity to exchange views and ideas with my constituents. When you talk about jobs, you also have to think about how you are going to prepare people for the jobs. Training is very important. Helping people to acquire skills is very important. The state in this case has a role to play. One of the problems bedeviling our employment creation is the fact that we have a large army of unskilled people. When you take the figures, only 40% of our kids who go through JSS end up in secondary schools and then other tertiary institutions. What do we do with them? No technical schools, very few, no vocational schools, no avenues for apprenticeship, and therefore they do not have the skills. I know that it is not the state's duty to provide the actual jobs, but the state must create an enabling environment. And indeed, the Constitution says very clearly that all political parties are to foster an atmosphere to promote private sector growth. Now, when you come to the productive areas of the economy, because the economy must be such that it can help the private sector to produce jobs. Now, we are being told that agriculture accounts for about 60% of the population workforce. Agriculture in this country has collapsed, and the reasons are not hard to find. You will find that agriculture needs upgrading. We need the necessary inputs. We need to give them capital. And therefore, if we take agriculture seriously, you are serving at least 60% of the population. Now, when you take the private sector is in distress. Our SMEs and then our other industries have collapsed. The business atmosphere is indeed very unfriendly. They are competing with cheap and sometimes shoddy imports. We haven't given the necessary capital, and indeed slow uptake of technology. So what we need to do is to look at the issues facing the industrial sector, because when the industrial sector is taken, they'll be able to provide the requisite jobs. But let me go back to the case, because when you talk about jobs, you also think about those who have gone through the educational ladder. There's graduate unemployment. What do you do about that? It means training, 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 training. You must prepare people for the job market. You must give them what it takes. And if we pay attention to the particular areas where jobs can be provided, you will find that indeed those kids who are roaming the streets will cease to roam the streets. We are always talking about GDP growth, but in what areas are we recording growth? When you look at industry, it's recording negative growth. And these are areas.
Cyril, do you want a follow-up question?
Yes, Prof.
Yes.
You mentioned a situation of an array of unskilled people in Ghana. And you've given us instances of things that you think a government formed by you would do to arrest the unemployment situation. Would you want to tell us the most critical one that you tackle? Should we give you, to the people of Ghana, give you the mandate?
Well, the most important one is the private sector and agriculture. The private sector is crying for help. And indeed, government should pay attention to to the private sector. Their needs are known, their problems are known, and therefore, without any favoritism, cronyism, because indeed the political atmosphere is so polluted that a lot of them just fold up their arms and say, well, why don't you have import things? But if we look at the private sector, that is one area. And I think agriculture, education, you have ICT. Why don't we train our kids in ICT? Start from the very beginning, because outsourcing can be done. So I believe that these are all avenues which we have not explored. And my government will make sure that we explore all these. But you know, we must mean what we say, and we do exactly what we say.
Dr. Mahama, it is your turn now to respond to the main question.
Good evening, fellow Ghanaians, and thank you, IEA, for having us come together. We have to start from where we are. Where we are is that 60% of the Ghanaian population are farmers. And one sector of that farming community has shown Ghana what needs to be done. When people talk about private enterprise, most of the farmers are private because there's no government plantations in this country. The cocoa farmer has taught the nation and all the world that when properly motivated, the Ghanaian can produce. Constantly, we are #1 or #2 producer of cocoa worldwide. That is because the cocoa farmer gets some sort of subsidy. And the most important thing for him is the guaranteed market. A farmer in Accra Plains said, Dr. Mahama, if you can guarantee me a market for my maize, I'll produce. Meanwhile, a poultry farmer in Brong-Ahafo is crying for poultry feed for his poultry. And I have seen the linkages from talking to these two farmers. We'll produce corn in Accra Plains, ship it over to a poultry meal factory, produce the meal, feed it to the poultry in Brong-Ahafo, feed the chicken to Ghanaian children. I promise that every Ghanaian child at lunch will get 1 piece of chicken. That chicken will be grown locally. Now, when you do this, and corn farmers can supply food in this crisis of food in the world, global crisis of food, when you do that, and cashew farmers can produce more, when you do that with these linkages that we have described, then you create jobs. Because the poultry mill is a factory that is going to employ people. So let's start from where we are. Then we move on to industrialization, agro-based industry. Ghana has been growing cocoa since 1847, when the Tekwashi brought the bean to Ghana. We still export the cocoa in the form of bean. No Ghanaian has been encouraged to establish a factory to extract the cocoa butter so that there will be jobs will be created here. We will, as a PNC administration, put these linkages in place so that the jobs will be created alongside what we are doing. The oil industry coming online should be a way to boost up the agricultural revolution that we need so that our importation of rice, sugar, and other food items will go down. When you do this, then you will create a linkage between the petrochemical industry and agro-industry, and there will be plenty of jobs for people. We think that we will, over the period, create not less than 100,000 new jobs, and this will be in that area.
Dr. Mahama, you have been talking about subsidies. What specific kinds of subsidies would you consider for farmers?
Guaranteed prices, buying the product at the farm gate. One thing I have noticed going around the country is that it is very, very difficult for farmers in Pandai, Ketekrachi area to bring their yams, their good yam farmers, to the market. The roads are bad. Oftentimes I see one big truck loaded, lying on its side with the yam in there, which gets rotten. By the time it gets to Accra, the farmer has lost because the market woman who has gone to get them now has to take account of the rotten yams within her consignment. So basically when she goes out to buy, she's giving the farmer less than production price. So this is the area we're going to look at.
Thank you very much. My colleague will ask the next question.
Yes.
Yes, Nana, you may do that. Briefly.
Well, I want to respond to the statement that was made by Professor Mills that agriculture in our country has collapsed. I think one of the things that is quite clear to many of us who know the realities of what's going on in Ghana and in West Africa is that the food stocks of our country, the capacity of our farmers to produce food, especially grains and tubers, is very high. That is the reason why we have been able, much better than even most of our neighbors, to withstand these dramatic increases in food prices that have come across the world. In Ghana today, food is relatively, the price of food is declining. We're seeing that from the figures on inflation that are produced, that the food component of our inflationary basket.
I believe, Nana, that your 30 seconds.
Well, just to make the point, that it's a picture very different from that of a collapsed agriculture. That's what I wanted to say.
So we move on to the next question, and I'm directing that to Dr. Ndu. Ghana has found oil in commercial quantities. What will you do to ensure that the oil wealth benefits all Ghanaians?
Well, thank you very much. I want all Ghanaians to listen to me very carefully on this one. What I want to say clearly is that if this oil is not going to benefit the Ghanaian, then it must stay on the ground. It must stay on the ground. Because we have seen natural resources in Ghana before. Oil coming to Ghana is nothing new. We have seen gold. What has it done for Obuasi? We have seen diamond. Go to Akwatia and see what has happened there. Go to Prestia. Go to Nsuta. Go to many of the places where we've seen natural resources. It has not benefited the Ghanaian. And therefore, I want to make sure that we don't experience what has happened in the Niger Delta in Nigeria, where there's abundant wealth flowing out and the people wallow in filth and poverty, and then they are tempted to disrupt the flow of oil. I don't want that in Ghana. And therefore, what I will do is this. Number one, all of those communities surrounding the area where the oil has been found, immediately I will get the planners from the Kwame Nkrumah University of Technology and others in the country to replan those communities, build modern communities with all of the necessary modern amenities there so that they can see direct, immediate benefit. We owe it to them. I don't want any more of Obuasi, any more of Akwatia, or anything else. And also, I have been to Korea. The Koreans, they built a refinery the same time we built the one in Tema. Go there and see what they have done. They don't have oil. They have a petrochemicals industry, real jobs, abundant money. They have gone from a per capita income behind that of Ghana at independence to more than 10,000. How did they do it? They made sure that the resources in their country benefited their own. And therefore, what I will do, quite frankly, I want to encourage directly, through all the powers of the state, to establish a petrochemicals industry in the western region.
Well, Kwame.
Dr. Ndom, we do know that oil can be a curse or a blessing, and in Africa, it seems to be the former. One of the biggest problems with petroleum in any country in Africa and many parts of the world is the problem of corruption and criminality. What's your proposal to deal with this? How will you ensure that Ghana is different?
Well, the problem is not the oil. The problem is the people who deal with the oil. I'm glad you mentioned the point about corruption, because what I want to do is to separate the responsibilities of a Minister of Justice from that of the Office of the Attorney General, so that we can have independence in deciding whom to prosecute, so that anybody does anything wrong in this country, they can't run to a political party and say, protect me. It is very necessary for the oil we have found. And I want Ghanaians to debate, what are we going to spend this oil money in? What are we going to do with it? And then have Parliament pass a law after careful and considerable review, not just something brought by the presidency, something taken around the country, so we can all agree that this is how we're going to spend this money, so that no president Nobody can come in this country and say, I want to spend the money this way, and therefore they spend it that way. Or I want to use the money for this, and so they use it for that. So we all agree, this is how we spend the money, and so it is spent judiciously.
Professor Mills, it's your turn.
Well, let nobody think that it's because of their good deeds that we have found oil in this country. It is a blessing from God to all of us, and we dare not fail the people of this country. We have to learn from other people's experiences. Already there are hawks looking into the oil fields, want to pounce on whatever revenues we get. Oil is exhaustible. We must know, therefore, that a time will come when we will not have these resources. We do not, as we sit here, even know the quantity. And let me also say that the fact that you are going to get revenues from oil is not automatic. They are depending on the price of crude oil. At some stage, they may decide that it is not worthwhile even exploiting the resources that we have. But indeed, what we must do is that the oil revenues, when we come first, we must try and fight for our fair share of this exhaustible resource. Number two, let's make sure that we make provision for the future and also for the present. With the present, let's use the revenues very wisely in order to shore up our economy, build the necessary infrastructure, and first of all, also make sure that those who suffer from the environmental hazards have some benefit from this resource. Let us get an independent authority which will account to the good people of this country for the oil resource. We don't want it to be a curse, but we do not also want all of us to pin all our hopes on this. Because you've got oil, you are abandoning your cocoa, you are abandoning agriculture, you are abandoning industry. Indeed, if you look at the oil law, the goods and services associated with the oil exploration should come from local sources. Let us seize the opportunity to train our people, get people to form companies to exploit this resource.
Professor Mills, we know that there is a huge foreign investment capital presently in the oil exploration, and that is evoking some apprehensions that eventually the management of the oil industry might equally be dominated by foreigners. What will you do, that is a government of yours, do to ensure that Ghanaians have larger say in the management of the oil industry?
Well, we have the GNPC. The GNPC has a stake in the oil resources. But at the end of the day, it is not the investor who owns the plot of land. It is the people of Ghana. We therefore must get a body which will make sure that it monitors what is going on. It gets the companies to account to it for all the resources so that they will be able to account to the people of this country. We are not going to leave everything in the hands of the oil companies. They must recoup their investment. So even at this stage, our government must be interested in the kind of investment that they are making. Whether these investments are of such a nature that indeed when the time comes, we can sit down and allow them to recoup. So this is not the time to say we have struck oil and then fold up our arms. Let us try and see exactly what kind of investment is being made and whether we would allow these investments to be recouped.
Dr. Mahama, assuming that your two directorship becomes a reality, how would you tackle the oil revenue to the benefit of Ghanaians? That's the question.
First, transparency. Transparency. Every contract my government will sign with any foreign company or agency must be brought before Parliament, scrutinized by Parliament and the people, so that they know what we as a nation are going into. After all, it may be my minister or I who will sign the contract, but it's on behalf of the people. So transparency is one way. Letting people know the quantities that are coming out and the revenue that is coming in. Knowledge, they say, is power. That is why another thing we will do is we've already made a commitment as part of developing public-funded universities in the 5 other regions that do not have them, to make one in Western region with a special emphasis on oil study. Our people must know what they can get out of the oil. I have been saying that if Ghana were the USA, every child growing up in the cocoa growing area will know what to do with the leaf of the cocoa tree, the bark of the tree, the pod, and maybe somebody will decide, because of his knowledge, to make carpets out of the fiber that you can get from the pod. But because we are ignorant, we are shipping everything abroad. So it is important for Ghanaians to begin to learn about what they can do with the oil on their land, what value they can add, what can they get out of it. And I said earlier on, it is the priority of the PNC administration to link a petrochemical industry with the agro-industry. After all, you can get fertilizer out of oil byproducts. So basically, with these linkages, you are merely making sure that the Ghanaians reap the benefit of this oil that we have found.
Pockets of presidents and friends, but that they're being used in the interest of the nation. So a formula that establishes transparency is the first key thing. And then the second is how, in fact, the revenues will be used to propel the development of our economy. As far as transparency is concerned, I think there are 2 or 3 things that already we can do, which are already being done. I mean, we have the opportunity right now that certain decisions are already being taken in the management. For instance, a Ghana National Petroleum Authority is about to be established. The bill is there before the Parliament, which seeks to separate the 2 functions of GNPC, its commercial and regulatory function. So the GNPC will concentrate on its commercial activities, and we would have a regulatory authority there responsible for the supervision of the industry. That process is ongoing. We will, of course, support that process if by the time I win the presidency and come into office, it hasn't been completed. Secondly, you're then dealing also with the revenue. What will we do? Well, our view is that we have to establish an oil fund, and with Parliament, work out a formula as to how that oil fund will be distributed. Clearly, none of us want to see a repetition of the issues in the Delta region. A certain percentage of the fund must go to the development of the Western region, clearly. We need also, I believe, in my view, to attach some of these revenues to critical areas of our national life, support our education, support our infrastructure and our health system, then create the fund for an industrial development of our nation. And we need also the stabilization fund that will be there for the future when so that you have a whole package, which is one, the transparent management.
Your time is over. Thank you.
Yes, oil excites so many sentiments, and all of you have spoken eloquently about what to do. You are talking about an oil fund. You spoke about regulatory functions and commercial functions of different bodies. Who will manage this oil fund? And what are some of the outlines of what this oil fund will go into?
That's what I was trying to say about the division, the regulatory function that the new Ghana Petroleum Authority will, and that authority and Parliament will be ultimately the bodies that will be responsible for designating the manager of the oil fund. It's important that all the decisions that we take them in the full glare of publicity and in the full light of day, so that the Ghanaian people, the ultimate beneficiaries of this asset, will see exactly how every single dollar of oil is being used. So that's the formula that we're having. And I believe very strongly that cooperation with Parliament in defining the uses of the oil and in insisting on Parliament working with the executive to agree on a formula for its distribution provides the best guarantee. We're not going to invent the wheel. There are other countries which are like us, which have been in the same position as we have. Norway is a classic example. We're taking our lessons from their example.
Well, Prof, you take the next round, the next question to them.
Professor Atta Mills, you will start answering this particular question. Now, we are still on the economy because it's really the heart of the concerns of Ghanaians. We do know that, excuse me, economic growth of the country requires foreign direct investment as well as the promotion of local initiative. Over the years, Ghanaian businessmen cry all the time for various reasons. How would you manage foreign investment in such a way that it does not stifle local initiative?
Describing the economy of a country as strong, buoyant, etc., without the involvement of Ghanaians leaves a lot to be desired. Ghana is for Ghanaians, and we must look up to Ghanaians first. We therefore have to look at our local entrepreneurs. Are they all right? Do they have the right atmosphere? Are we giving them the right input? If you look at the private sector right now, the private sector is in distress. They have a lot of problems. Their contribution to GDP is almost nil. Over the past few years, they've recorded zero growth. It is good to have foreign direct investment, yes, but that is to supplement. And indeed, we have to be very careful because given the problems that we now have with the global financial problems, we are going to find that one of the possible results is that FDI is going to dry up. So I think that FDI should come to supplement the efforts of Ghanaians. But if we just concentrate on FDI, whose indeed contribution is very uncertain, and indeed we have cases where there is capital flight, I say that charity begins at home. Let's look at our private sector. Look at local entrepreneurs. There were some who were doing very well years ago. Where are they now? When you talk about Ghanaian economic giants, who are they? I would rather talk about Ghanaian economic giants, boast about them, rather than refer to FDIs, whose loyalty to the Ghanaian economy may not always be the kind that we want. They have problems, and the problems are well known. We should tackle them, and that is the way to gain confidence. And mind you, FDIs will come when they know that Ghanaians are themselves investing in the economy.
Thank you very much. Which areas of Ghanaian business do you think are so critical as to support in terms of your prioritization of your attitude to the Ghanaian entrepreneurial class?
Industry, manufacturing, agriculture. When you come to industry, what industrial establishments do we have now? And these are the sources of employment for a number of our people. We are importing everything. When it comes to agriculture, I made that statement that agriculture has collapsed. What is happening to the poultry industry? How many poultry farmers can say that they are doing well? When you look at fishing, we are importing fish into the country. When you look at livestock, what is happening in these areas? I think that with manufacturing, we must be able to manufacture using our local raw materials. I would therefore place very much emphasis on agriculture. Agro-processing is one area where you can ensure food security and also produce for export. So it's a combination of factors. But I know the Ghanaians have expertise in these areas and can be relied upon.
Thank you very much. Dr. Mahama.
The best way to get direct foreign investment is to make sure that the Ghanaian at home is doing well. Then foreigners will see that the business environment is very good and they will come. Many times we go out with a cap in hand begging for direct foreign investment when indeed locally we could help the local people to grow. We have this gentleman who has been manufacturing cars and doing very well. That somebody like that really ought to help to get a partner, maybe one of these car giants, to come in and work with him to build the cars locally. We started building cars, or at least assembling cars, when I was a medical student and used to do industrial medicine in these assembly plants. Where are they? That is the basis of direct foreign investment. When you have a local entity, and then they go out and contract their partners to bring them in. But if you just go out there and beg people to come, they will come. But when things change or your conditions change, they will leave. But the Ghanaian is going nowhere. This is his homeland. So our approach would be to make sure that whatever it is that we'll give to the foreign investor, whatever benefits, we do it. For example, I understand that when Dr. Leman ordered 4 Black Star ships in those days from Korea, the company had to have government guarantee, Korean government guarantee of delivery of these ships by the time said before the contract could be signed. Go to the government today and say that I have a contract to export something abroad. I want a guarantee. It will take you the term of the government because of bureaucracy, and they want something, part of the deal, before they give it to you. So these are the problems that are mitigating against direct foreign investment. I will not go out and beg people to come, but I'll make it very, very palatable for my own people. Some Ghanaians are abroad. They hold citizenship abroad. They are owning their own businesses. These are the people that I will ask to come back home.
Yes, certainly, the Ghanaian businessman, businesswoman wants to compete on the international scale. But one limitation is usually credit facilities. How do you address that for the Ghanaian businessman, woman to access capital without as much sweat as they are having now?
We will do that through local banks, which we will guarantee. The problem is that when you have this sort of program, the party machinery usually will hijack it, and people think that this is a free gift from the party they have to come to power. So you do it through the banks, and you have an understanding with the banks that these are areas I want to encourage. So if anybody comes, and these are the conditions, you give them the loan. If they default for genuine reasons, international finance crisis, or strikes all over the place, or natural disasters, then the government will be willing to pay that money. But if you let it be a bank to individual or enterprise deal, rather than government coming forward, like the recent support that the government has given to people to alleviate the poverty. They first got the fertilizer, and now you have to get a coupon. To get the coupon, you have to go to the district chief executive. And you never get the coupon from the district chief executive on time. By the time you get it, it's over, and you can't use your fertilizer.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mahama. Now it's your turn, Honorable Nana Akufo-Addo.
Thank you, Kwame. All the economies of the world, even the biggest economy, the United States of America, welcomes very much foreign investment into its country. Anytime that you are in a position to use other people's savings to help develop your economy, it's a bonus for you.